I read yesterday that they've already spent €1 billion exploring introducing the digital euro. And I think they're nearly ready to put this out. Money is speech, is language. To get that surveyed doesn't feel right. Nothing to hide. I've got nothing to hide at all. Why is it a problem then? I got this feeling, and I know I'm not alone, of really wanting to break free. And you search for something to help you break free. It wasn't until the beginning of last year that the time felt right. We felt a shift.
I wanted to start by talking about the talk that you just gave. What was your intention with the talk? What were you hoping to get across, and how do you think it was received?
A good question. I was the first of the day, a difficult slot, I would say, so attendance was down a bit. But actually, I was very happy. What I was trying to get across, firstly, and I think it was in my top 5 thing, rules for Bitcoin, my personal top 5, was Bitcoin only, to emphasize continuously, not your keys, not your coin, so self-custody, and the freedom aspect for digital nomads. Because I'd been on a talk yesterday about flag theory, and there's so many problems setting up bank accounts. It's not simple at all. Even for a non-EU person coming here to Bulgaria to go into one of the banks here, they say no, actually. It's very, very difficult. So the concept was one of the main concepts was that you can travel with those 12 or 24 words in your skull or written down in a slightly cryptic way maybe on your travels to network with the very, very powerful community of Bitcoiners around the world. And I think hopefully I got that across. That was the idea, to find your Bitcoiners wherever you go and start your journey on Bitcoin and learning. You can't, I think the limitations of a 25, 30-minute slot that I had, there was a lot of information there. So the idea was to scatter quite a bit out, but to sort of end on the freedom aspect that Bitcoin gives all of us, including digital nomads, the freedom that we crave. Freedom from a system. We're sitting here in Europe, here in Bansko, in Bulgaria, and we're hearing a lot of talk about a central bank digital currency, the digital euro. And you can imagine, unlike in America, where at the moment they've said this is off the table, this idea. Here, I read yesterday that they've already spent €1 billion exploring, €1 billion, exploring introducing the digital euro. And I think they're nearly ready to put this out. Why could a digital euro be something we may not want? I think you know, Kyle, they have this stuff in China. I think that's probably all I need to say. The potential to be surveilled, to lose our freedom, to be able to transact and pass value to each other, centralized control, all of that stuff. It's kind of like the opposite that Bitcoin freedom gives us. So I think we're at an important point here in Europe to educate a little bit what could come down the road, and they're saying it will come, so we shall see. We need to understand the threat and get people to understand that Bitcoin is the lifeboat that we need from this ship that may be wobbling a little bit right now.
So why do you think people are so oblivious to the obvious plans that have been stated by the ECB?
Well, I think it's in your question. The plans are obvious, but they have not really been circulated in the mainstream media. You and I are hearing about it through, if you like, our echo chamber a little bit on X and Nostr. But the reality is, and you maybe find this out later when you go and ask some of the digital nomads here, and ask them, do they know what a CBDC is? Do they know any of the plans with the digital euro from the European Central Bank? I'll be surprised if you find much knowledge. Of course, those that attended today's little talk I did, where I did obviously suggest that they need to think about this thing that's coming down the road. Almost definitely, it seems. I can only go on what Christine Lagarde has been saying and telling us very clearly. They're going to trial in October 2025, this year, a digital euro to keep the influence of the euro big. They don't want the euro to die. Yeah. So from her perspective, from her perspective, it makes logical sense to do what she's doing. But possibly, I would suggest for us to think about, she said, well, it's similar how it works in China. Well, I'm not sure I want to be in China. Someone would have to convince me very hard that I want to be surveyed and potentially cut off if I make a mistake about buying something they don't like. For example, here in Europe, where we are here in Bulgaria, we're not, specifically in Bulgaria, we don't have the environmental thing so strong at all. But of course, in places like Germany and France, they may say there's only so much meat one can have because, as I understand it, cows emit some methane gas that could harm the atmosphere. Potentially, this is what they say. So I don't know, I'm not being conspiracist about it. I'm just trying to wonder why we need the euro. I see the perspective, but as just ordinary people here of any age, I think we need to think deeply whether we really want a digital euro and the impact it could have on our lives. This is programmable money, which means it could be frozen. It could disappear. It could have a time limit on the time that you have to spend it. There could be different tiers applied. So it's not the same as cash. Cash at the moment, if you can get it out of your bank, I can say, thank you for coming and filming me. Here's 1,000 lev. I really appreciate it, Cal. Thank you very much. And I can do that still, happily. If there's no cash around, or less cash around, or harder to get cash, and it's a digital euro, then someone may say, why has Kyle got 1,000 euros? He may collect 1,000 lev, or euros from 1st of January 2026 here in Bulgaria. So I think we need to think very hard, and to answer your question, as far as I know, of all the objections that you hear about the euro, of which I have to admit many are false and is indeed misinformation, I have not heard one single comment about a digital euro here in Bulgaria yet, apart from Bitcoiners.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So I feel a sense of urgency when I talk to you. What are the stakes and what do you think is at risk right now, basically?
At risk is our feeling of freedom. You are from the United States of America, where at the moment they have said the concept of a digital dollar, in terms of a central bank controlled digital dollar, is off the table. Yeah. And Europe seems to be, if we listen to the head of the ECB, Christine Lagarde, she says that we're going to introduce a digital euro. The stakes are higher the more you think about it. So at first, you might say you're being conspiracy theory. What's the problem? It's just like, it's digital money anyhow we use. You've got your bank account, we're sending digital money to each other anyhow.
I've got nothing to hide.
Nothing to hide. I've got nothing to hide at all. I'm not involved in crime, you're thinking. I'm not involved in any of the things that are ever considered illegal under the laws of the country. Why is it a problem then? The problem is that things change. And we've seen in many countries, a new leader comes in and becomes a bit more extreme one way or another. There's countries like Turkey that changed, and much of the Middle East has had new leaders that come in and change things and reduce freedoms. And it's another form of control. Maybe the hint, ladies and gentlemen, was during the COVID era. People would comply and do what they were told, often under force. And we saw some pretty strong force applied in some countries, didn't we, Gail? So that should be our hint to start waking up to the infringement of our freedoms. Now, if you were around in COVID times and you agreed, if you lived in Australia and you thought it was absolutely fine, you were contained in your home and that you believed that the government was right on everything, that we should have, I don't know, in America you have something like 60 vaccines.
And this is 70 by the age of 3 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not against vaccinations, but I must say I'm now querying whether one needs 70 of them. Is that a fair? And you have Robert Kennedy Jr., who, the second he was elected, the share prices of Pfizer and the drug companies went down because, guess what? He is a little bit sick and tired of the lobbying which, for those that don't know, is another word for bribery. And, you know, I'm just questioning whether 70 vaccines are needed. And now we're talking about digital euro, but I think there is a slight connection here of control.
For sure.
And our wake-up call, a recent wake-up call, should be during the lockdowns during COVID-19, where control can be applied. Would you want control or a record of every way you spend your money? I'm not talking about illegal ways. I'm talking about ways that could profile you. Maybe you like the outdoors too much. You like your snowboarding too much.
You shouldn't be driving 2 hours to the mountains.
No, you shouldn't be
every
doing
weekend.
that. Yeah, you're using too much fuel. Doesn't matter if it's an electric car, you're still using energy. There could be anything. I'm just planting that point is that we've seen this before where things get turned on their head to feel like normal, like you can't go out in the open air. Now here in Banska, I would like to state that we were extremely lucky, and I'm extremely grateful to the authorities here in Bulgaria who kept this wonderful resort of Bansko open so that we could freely enjoy the mountains. Now, I was probably amongst the oldest people skiing. And really, we weren't wearing masks. We were going on life very much as normal. Some venues opened and people looked the other way. There was not a problem. And I said, I think, in one of my videos, you know, my answer for the COVID, this is not health advice, is to go up a mountain and get some vitamin D. And, you know, guess what? We were all fine. I'm not, sorry, to those that had COVID terribly, just to be crystal clear, I'm not saying this was a very terrible disease, and but for the vast majority of people who were healthy up mountains, as far as in my experience, they were perfectly fine. In fact, more than fine, they had a great time, mental health, energy, and general well-being. We were the best. So I'm sort of planting that theory where a government tells you what to do, then, in COVID times, to a digital euro and ask you to just make that little leap, what could become normal, be made to feel normal when it's not normal. It should be normal for us to be able to freely transact without surveillance. So this is the point. I don't think anyone would disagree with that, would they?
No, without the ability to transact, what other rights do you really have, right? You know, we focus on the First Amendment in the United States, the ability to express our opinions, but if you can't transact freely, then what you have to say, it's like secondary to, it's such a base, you know, thing that humans, in my opinion, should be allowed to do.
Yes, but the thing is, you have the Constitution, and most Americans actually do understand, many Americans, I should say, to me, as far as I know, and I'm no expert, understand this basic freedom of speech concept. In some other countries, I'm from the UK, one could argue in recent times that there is a blurring of lines. They're more worried about upsetting and offending. You American good folks don't have that worry with your freedom of speech. You may have it at the edges, I understand that, but generally speaking, because everything in life is relative, it's very good in the USA. And of course, code is being proven under law as freedom of speech. You could argue Bitcoin, yes, I call it money, but really it's a messaging system, yeah? Okay. It's a language. And to ban a language is totally against the American Constitution.
Absolutely,
Yeah? Fundamental human rights. So this is why I say we need to be very careful, look closely at the digital euro, talk to your American friends and see how they would like to be surveyed to that extent, where, as I say, the vast majority of American people do understand the Constitution and their freedom of speech. And your freedom, money is speech, is language. To get that surveyed doesn't feel right.
Now I want to talk to you about why you're building Ordermoon and why, you know, we've established what the stakes are. They're very high.
Yeah.
Where does building on Bitcoin, where does driving grassroots Bitcoin adoption come into the picture, in your view?
From my view, it is all about, or mainly about, grassroots adoption. These are real lives and families we're talking about, real futures. And as I mentioned just this morning at the Nomad Fest presentation, I addressed the younger people in the audience who look at their parents and grandparents. When their parents or grandparents were younger, the multiples to buy a home, they were affordable. In fact, going to your grandparents' age and my parents' age, hey, you had one person working who had a partner, spouse, and 3 or 4 children on one salary. Imagine how you feel now, your generation. This is not a deal. This is not necessarily something that should continue, in my opinion. So the feeling is that there should be a way out of this system. And as I mentioned, of course, the endless money printing, all those wonderful arguments are causing the issue, the debasement of our currencies, including the dollar, including the euro, including the yen, the pound, etc. And to some very close neighbours of ours in Turkey. As you know, they've had a 50% plus inflation. And these are official figures, by the way. I mean, real numbers could be higher. Yeah?
Most definitely are, yeah.
That makes life tough for everybody. But imagine you're living in a country with high debt that needs to be paid off by the younger generation who are working, as the older generation are retiring, the boomer generation. I'm 1 year away from boomer, by the way. But they want their pensions, they want that. And I just cannot see that happening for the younger generation. I think that's in jeopardy, or it comes at a price that is unacceptable. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
No, it does not, because I asked you about medium of exchange and how that comes in, but...
I went on my rant. As a particular podcaster said, it's a safe space to just talk nonsense about everything.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
This is your space.
Yeah. So Ordermoon, because the wider issues during my presentation, I had to get those in because I had to set the stage before I talked about the specific problem of grassroots adoption, which is you and I and everybody accumulating those Satoshis. And in Ordermoon, we kind of had this branding to attract the Bitcoin community, but also to have a base on building on Bitcoin, so putting Bitcoin at the center of our business. We started accepting Bitcoin, and that helped us build up our own treasury reserve, if you like, which is working out fine so far. And we have a whole ethos of our platform, which helps onboard owners of restaurants to accept Bitcoin and spend their Bitcoin, and for people to be able to come to our locations here in Bulgaria, and anyone who accepts Bitcoin. And by the way, there's lawyers, accountants, there's e-commerce sites. As you know, there's lots of people doing great work here in Bulgaria. So people to come to Bulgaria and spend the sats, to owners to get orange-pilled, because you know what, within all of us, this is something I learned from Andreas Antonopoulos back in 2015 on his wonderful videos. There's a chip of us that like collecting things. And there's this feeling of wanting to collect some sats that we see owners get into after a period of time. After 3 months, they go, ooh, I want more. So therefore, that motivates them. So Ordermoon was, we, like yourself, we're on the Geyser Fund site, and grant came from Bitcoin Beach. And whilst not a huge amount of money, that was the motivation. I'm very grateful to them for us to be responsibly allocating those sats to directly motivate. We don't use it for anything else. Those sats come in and then they go out. Yeah, we're not using them for general expenses or anything else. They're purely to motivate the owners, users, and also, interestingly enough, talking about motivation, to delivery drivers of the food under our brand Ordermoon. And they love it. So if they get a 5-star review, they get sats and they become Bitcoiners and they start telling their friends. So this is what I consider grassroots. These are everyday, ordinary people. These are not financial types, which in a way I come from that world of banking and corporate finance, all that stuff. I'm kind of lucky I had a kind of a financial education. I'm talking about regular people who don't at school get taught the history of money, funnily enough, or much of a finance education. You may get it from your parents, but you will not get any lessons from the state education as far as I'm aware, which incidentally, you remind me, is something we are going to try and do much more here in Bulgaria, is to go into schools and educate the young. It is about education for ourselves on a regular basis, but by golly, we really need to get the younger generation using sats. I have an 8-year-old. He has a little wallet with his little sats on, and we talk about it regularly. And I'd argue he's lucky to have me as a father, humbly as I can say, because he's learning about money. And I think this is terribly important for the future, because on the basis that currencies historically, at any rate, have got debased, and of course I spoke about nothing stops this train in the talk earlier this morning, is that it's looking very hard, I'll put it that way, some would say impossible, for us to get out of this debt mess that we have with our government spending and pressing that big red button to print more money. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yes, that's what I was looking for right there. So I'm very interested in what you're doing, because you're building a business that is profit driven.
Yep.
And there's lots of different initiatives around Bulgaria, but what was the impetus behind going the route of a business versus a nonprofit or some other, format to, if the goal is education, it doesn't need to be a business. Why did you choose to go that route?
Well, I'm a great believer in profit, actually, for motivation, and particularly for small businesses. It's a tough life, especially here in Bulgaria. It really is hard. These venues selling coffees and small restaurants, even restaurant chains, it's competitive, it's difficult, regulations are often quite onerous. And we have the services that they need, be it delivery, be it QR menu codes, be it reputation management for Google reviews, for instant websites, for table booking. And we feel that this can be replicated. Going into places just on Bitcoin is one thing, but going into a venue and saying, hey, you need these services. And kind of sitting behind that is the Bitcoin thing. To charge in with Bitcoin right now, as I speak, is a tough gig.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah? And this is all around the world. There's no difference between here in Bulgaria than anywhere in the world. So we like to think we've got a platform ready to go, possibly one of the first, anywhere in the world. Could be people running circular economies, but it could be like a small or big chain of restaurants delivering pizza. We have a driver's app as well, all ready to go. It's all working and has been working for quite a long time with integrated Lightning payments. Yeah, so we have grand plans, and we really hope that we can get more people thinking about onboarding people, not just through this Satoshi Bitcoin word, but through services. And of course, with the embedding of the Breeze SDK, means that, and we were just talking about this as we were walking up the road, the ability to do all sorts of things that are coming down the road, to take an extra fee to pay for the services directly, or to split payments. There's all sorts of things that we can do with this technology. It's truly remarkable. So, yeah.
So specifically with the split payments, my understanding is that this is a technology that allows for zero custodial risk. Mm-hmm. So when a payment is made, it's directly and its final settlement to multiple locations at once.
Correct.
So how is that revolutionary? And I mean, where else do you see that coming into play?
I don't know, to be honest. There could be multiple owners, like we've seen. We have restaurant owners using our system who like this. They want the Satoshis. They're in different locations, and they want to attract Bitcoiners to spend their sats. It's that simple. They want more business. Bitcoiners are, and hopefully that came across today, are an incredibly loyal, generous bunch of people. We start off our conversations on the very similar level, which is just so joyous. We don't have to go through the other chit-chat to get to where we are. And I think increasingly we're seeing restaurant owners recognizing they need to attract Bitcoiners. It's about money. So to go back to your other question, I really believe in the profit incentive for human action. Yeah, we do the right things when there's a profit incentive. We tend to do the wrong things if we're sitting behind a desk in a government office, even with the best intentions of the world. We really want peace and love and we want to do everything right. But because there isn't that check and balance of allocating money in the correct way that profit and loss does, then you're going to make mistakes, often totally by accident. The law of unintended consequences comes to mind with central action. So the wonderful thing about the profit motive is all the time, like you are figuring out things right now. You're going to conferences, you're networking, you're wondering whether you need to spend some sats on some extra equipment. Is that going to be a good investment to make more? The profit incentive is driving you working so hard, including coming here to Bansko and walking up the street with your camera gear. Very impressive, Kyle. So yeah, non-profits, great, absolutely. And I think a degree of it is altruism as well. Of course, it is non-profitable for us, but we want it to be profitable for us and for everybody else. Ultimately, yes, we're very much motivated for other people to gain from our platform, for us to make it profitable and sustainable. And I think that helps us to be efficient as well. Yeah.
That's the word that came to mind for me, is sustainable,
Yeah.
right? Like, you might be the most altruistic person in the world, but if it's not sustainable, eventually it's going to come to an end.
Yeah. I think that's right. I mean, I love altruism. I love the idea of generous people giving money to the cause that they believe from the bottom of their heart. And Bitcoiners do that, of course, in spades. But as you rightly say, Kyle, this process has to continue after that flush of enthusiasm wanes, as something else comes on the radar, you know.
Absolutely. And you mentioned briefly that you had a past career in the fiat world. Talk to me a little bit about that and how you found Bitcoin despite being, relatively successful in the fiat world.
Yeah, I'd say okay-ish. I wouldn't say I was any genius. I worked in corporate finance, Royal Bank of Scotland, GE Capital, lastly Barclays Bank. And in these organisations, these are good people. We think we're good, at any rate. We're just normal people doing these jobs. But quite often when you work for any corporate, be it a bank or anybody else, if you look at maybe people 10, 20 years older than yourself doing a similar sort of thing, and you question, do I want to be looking back at myself doing what they're doing, in 10 years' time? And so you get this I got this feeling, and I know I'm not alone, you get this feeling of not going mad quite, but really wanting to break free. And you search for something to help you break free. A few manage it, and it can be difficult, of course, because maybe you've built a lifestyle on a certain level of income, certain amount of debt, etc., etc. So for my personal journey, I genuinely felt I needed to break free from the corporate world. No disrespect to any of those banks. They think they do a good job. In fact, I remember when KYC and AML came in 2001. Okay, I remember those days. And it felt overbearing. We had to ask directors some crazily embarrassing questions. And yeah, it just felt over-intrusive and unnecessary. And of course, this level of regulation has continued. And then at the same time, we hear billions have been laundered through HSBC just by bribing a manager, not these little businesses. This is nonsense. Billions are laundered through banks. So it just slows everything down, the regulation. Then it's moved to legal firms, and everyone gets... There's a whole industry of this. The word is called compliance. Sounds nice, compliance, doesn't it? Great.
Doesn't sound nice to me.
It's not nice. I can tell you it sounds nice to the people who are involved in it because it's never-ending compliance. So this is the world that has been built up since those early days and has become increasingly overbearing. And I was riffing off what happened yesterday when a lady was talking about flag theory for digital nomads and the difficulty of opening up a bank account. Yeah. And, you know, you have difficulties with your bank account anyhow when you travel. Your card can get swallowed. You sometimes need local cash. And to use the phrase Bitcoin fixes this, in this instance, it really does. You find your Bitcoiner and you have your 12, 24 words and life should be okay for you, yeah.
If you're building on Bitcoin or just trying to stay focused in a noisy world, you need energy, not another crash from coffee or sugary drinks. That's why in 2023, I founded EARTHY. EARTHY is a natural energy beverage. It tastes like hot chocolate, comes in a powder. You can do 1 scoop, 2 scoops before the gym, before you work. This product is made to give you long-lasting, clean, sustained energy. So if you're ready to level up your energy, cognition, your focus, you gotta try some EARTHY energy. The link is down below. Now let's get back to the show. So I am curious about that because at the end of the day, we all talk about Bitcoin. Like you said, we're in an echo chamber. Some might call it a cult, but it's really just a tool to empower human beings. Yeah. And so I'm curious how you've seen through Ordermoon people's lives changing, their decision making, their approach to their business or their life. Yeah. Have you heard any stories that you could share with us?
Yes, I can. I've got to try and protect identities as well as I can. There's one well-known chef who was, the other week, we were with him, to talk about a real deep collaboration. And he was overjoyed about the number of sats that he has accumulated. Yeah? So, whilst not saying his life has changed, but his progression to work closer with us and the sort of things that we can do to help everybody has massively increased. And that's simply down to that one word, Bitcoin. So, and then it opens conversations. We've just had a coffee at Black Honey, yeah? Hristo and Lubomira, the owners, they were a little bit curious. They maybe messed around with some altcoins in the past a little bit. And it was a gradual process, but now, when they see Bitcoiners choose them to spend their sats, they get excited. They're following the price now, yeah? The price is good marketing.
That's very true.
So it is a freedom aspect, like we talk about. It is much more than the money. But the money is important. And I'm very happy to talk about price all day long with people because it is the perfect marketing tool, because everybody's doing their best to save money as nomads, traveling around, find cost-effective places, do the activities they enjoy. But so many are missing the obvious route. Some discipline to save, good old-fashioned saving, but in a method that's actually going to mean that they can catch up and really have that some freedom in the future, rather than just catching up, feeling they're catching up, but only for it to be continually debased, which happens with our currencies. So it's a very important message we have. As I say, I stress all ages, but the younger folks I particularly stress. And, you know, to continue the conversation, answering a question you haven't asked, I am very keen on more businesses, be they e-commerce businesses, people, I mentioned artists, people to get involved with the community, to get that energy, to get the ethos, and provide goods and services to Bitcoiners. Because the number of Bitcoiners, as you've seen going around conferences, has increased over the period of time. And as that increases, there's more customers to sell to. So it's simple as that. It does come down to money. You know, you're not going to start getting into Bitcoin if you think ultimately, I can talk about freedom all day long. What many people need to start with, is it going to make my future a better one, and the future of my family a better future? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I always talk about optionality
Yes.
Yes, of course, we would not be in Bitcoin if we thought the price was just going to stay at 100,000, because then we'd lose purchasing power. But for you, how important is having the freedom of location and the ability to be your own bank? You've moved here to Bulgaria. I don't know, is that a very common migration path from?
Well, it wasn't at the time. Everyone was saying, Lance, you must be crazy, including most people back in the UK and also the Bulgarians here who typically went off to cities in Germany, UK, France, Spain, etc. And they're going, why? I remember that very, very vividly. Why would you want to be here? And I'm not sure whether it was the answer at the time, but it's my answer now. Sometimes we don't value things when they don't have the price tag attached that's high. So going back in the day, the price tag that was attached to Bulgaria was low, cheap, poor, not relevant, small. Switzerland's smaller, but that's fine. But can Bulgaria offer much of what Switzerland's got and more? It has a coastline after all, Switzerland doesn't. I'd argue, yes, it can. Or it's a good entry point. Maybe you want to go to Switzerland later, wherever you want to go, but Bulgaria has many advantages, but certainly at the time, it wasn't valued because of the price. And of course, my generation were brought up with this thing called the Eastern Bloc. We had a map, and it was pink, much of it. The Soviet Union, the USSR, yeah? This was all pink, all the Balkan region, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, all the Czech Republic, as we call it now. Just like invisible, we didn't know anything about it. Until I came here, of course, I'm very interested in this topic on the communist era. We were told that the Russians were about to launch nuclear weapons at us and made us very fearful, people of my generation. We were quite scared as kids, nuclear war. They were told the same here, that the West was going to do that to them, yeah? So there was this sort of not knowing anything about this part of the world. When, of course, and I would say, come here, see for yourself, but I was talking to an Alaskan couple day before yesterday here. I met them actually in Sofia, and I said, I suggest you just check out Bansko. He said, oh yes, we're definitely going to come. I'll ping you when you're here. And they pinged me. We met up for a bite to eat in the centre. And they said, I asked them, how is Bansko? Are you enjoying it? They said, we love it. We're going to buy a place and come here. We just absolutely love it. We love mountains. We get it. We also love the summer, mountains as well. So they understand both winter and summer. So many people will come here and value it now, which is heartwarming. And I encourage people to come here and spend some time here, see if they like it, and maybe spend some more time.
I do want to ask you, really to explain to me how Ordermoon functions. What's the business model? What are the services that you guys offer? How did that come to be? And just talk to me a little bit about how you guys have been building.
Okay, so my business partner set it up originally in 2007 under the brand Zavadania that still exists. It was a simple listings Yelp site back in the day. Nasko and I met in 2011. He immediately said to me, Lance, you and I will work together. I had this site, tourist site, which we still do. I say we put everything together, 50-50. And Bansko Blog was set up as my side hustle to relieve myself of my banking duties. So that was my exit strategy, if you like. That went okay, and then I felt confident enough to exit banking. So we had this platform, and I bought his business partner out in whatever year, 7 years ago or so, yeah? And so we put everything under kind of one roof together. And so we realized, to get to your question of Ordermoon, we wanted something, we've always wanted something that had Bitcoin at its heart. Now, back in 2016, Nasko successfully kind of onboarded one restaurant. But it was short-lived, the market wasn't ready, everything was on chain, 10 minutes confirmation time. Some Bitcoin was going back and forth, but not much. And it really felt, it wasn't until the beginning of last year that the time felt right. We felt a shift in feeling. More people were beginning to accept. We felt we could actually do something as well. And we have the technology, we have developers. So we have iOS, Android, all that stuff, front end, back end developers to make this stuff happen. So I think your point is that Ordermoon is there to do something from the heart, which was to propagate more acceptance and more use of Bitcoin by leveraging our services. You asked what the services are. And the services started originally, as I mentioned, as listings, but they moved on to be food delivery. When the boom in food delivery happened during the COVID area, we started developing that side. So we developed what we now call Ordermoon as a driver app and a restaurant app for delivery. And in there, we have added table booking. So like an open table, very similar. The tables are allocated, the restaurant owner can play around with the tables, the time slots, and all that good stuff. And then other services, we have a very quick website builder. Within 48 hours, you've got a website. We've got reputational management. That means Google reputation system. We have menu QR code system, and some other things that all combine to services that restaurants really, really want. And we feel we're sort of almost unique in our position. There's other food aggregators who have a lot of money, you know, the Ubers of the world. Not here, we have a company called Glovo and Takeaway. But we felt that the market's right for ethical business. And when I say ethical for the restaurants, there's a lot of, like every business, there's those that push the boundaries of what I would consider ethical. And many restaurant owners says, this is ridiculous. We've got to pay these 30% fees to Takeaway. And they say, oh, don't worry, put up your menu prices. People will just pay it. And we'll make free delivery. Yeah? Oh, we'll do this. We know how the world works. And people fall for it for a while. Thank you. And so there's a section of restaurant owners that get us. We said, no, the market needs ethical delivery. Because we're consumers as well. We'll order a takeaway. We want to see the same prices. And we understand that there is a cost for someone to cook the food and to get someone to come and bring it to us, yeah? So we feel there is a gap in the market for a homegrown company, we're not foreign owned, that provides this sort of service. So Ordermoon has this now platform that we feel can be replicated, it makes money, and can make a lot more money for other people to get involved with it, because it enables the mission, that particularly if you've got a Bitcoin chip in you, to help spread the good word on the street at this grassroots level. So people running ordinary businesses. And the idea is that then suppliers get involved. We get this Bitcoin circular economy. So you have meetups like happened a few months back in Plovdiv. We had a merchant meetup. People came from all around Bulgaria who are into Bitcoin, accepted Bitcoin, and on the Sunday everyone was buying stuff from each other with Lightning. And it's a really nice feeling, actually, that there is this little group of people that's expanding all the time. So to kind of repeat what I'm saying, Ordermoon is about spreading the word, but via other services. Not just saying, hey, Bitcoin's great, you need to accept it, and people are going to flood to your restaurant because you're accepting Bitcoin. We're going, hey, you need these services, you haven't got a website, you're not managing your reputation, you haven't yet got a QR code, you haven't got table booking system. We can offer all of this at a very fair price, all under one roof. And at the same time, we can deal with your Bitcoin and bring this to you. We can promote you, which we do. We make videos. So we've almost got to I once learned, maybe 6-7 years ago, that every business needs to be a finance business and a marketing business. Yeah? You do videos, yeah? You'll accept Bitcoin yeah, for your work. You are a marketing and finance business. You will go far. So we all need to think about our strategy for our content side and for our finance side. When we talk about finance, of course, we're talking about Bitcoin, building on Bitcoin, and having a strategy for Bitcoin. Not just as individuals, but for our individual little businesses, putting our business head on. When I say individual, there may be people watching this video who have multinational businesses turning over hundreds of million. As I said in my presentation today, and actually there's a very big business here today. I spoke to the owner, not the owner, one of the guys who works for them. They have 200 employees. And I said, you probably don't realize that, but there's a business doing the same as you, but actually Bitcoin only. And they have huge support. We need to talk. I need to help you. And I can introduce to other people who will help you. So this is relevant all the way through. I've been talking about grassroots, but a little bit, more corporate, if you like, roots. That's important too. Young, small, relatively small businesses growing, they need to do content and they need to do the finance, the Bitcoin piece now. Be early. Another presentation was saying, yes, you need to be early. It really helps. Be one of the first movers, yeah? We love Nasco, my business partner, and I love playing. We like to be early. I guess we have that little chip in us. So he was very easy to orange pill. He just was almost instant. I said, Nasco, this is what you need to do. It's early. I think there's a good chance that this will be the future. So, but not everyone's like that. I understand that, and I understand the reasons. But I would say as a general business thing, if you see something, have a play with it. It may not work out. You may not have to actually invest much time and energy, but do check it out. And Bitcoin definitely falls in one of those, in that category. We need to think about making a strategy because, as I said in the presentation, a few years down the road, people will be going, what's your Bitcoin strategy? It'll become normal. I don't know how many years, but we will get to that stage in the same way that every proper business has a website now. It's unimaginable. But in the early days, and I lived through those in 99, 2000, when we moved from dial-up internet to broadband. By the time we got to 2001, every business was beginning to set up a website. So we're kind of like 1999 right now. This is the feeling I have, at any rate. Yeah.
Okay, so I had a slight misconception about Ordermoon because I thought it was just a service for people to pay for food with Bitcoin, and all you guys did was facilitate the transaction. Now I'm learning that you guys actually, while Bitcoin is at the heart of what you do and it's driving your mission, you're actually just finding a gap in the market in a traditional way.
That's right.
And was that a strategy that changed? Did you approach it that way, or did you start by saying, let's do something with Bitcoin, and then figured out the services and the gap in the market afterwards?
No, we had the services before. Yeah. And so it's really, like many businesses, if you like, bolting on Bitcoin. Yeah. We wanted a Bitcoin business, but we had a business. Yeah. We just needed the technology to move forward a bit with Lightning, which it now has, and the ability to easily integrate, which it now has, and will continue to do. So we can continue to build, and there'll be other things. There'll be Liquid. There's other technologies based on Bitcoin that we will use. I'm sure about it. So, and that's really the message. It doesn't have to be a completely new business, a Bitcoin business. You're in the content producing business. That's an existing business.
Yeah, it's a proven business.
Exactly. And like someone said in yesterday's first presentation of the day, the gentleman played with Midjourney 3 years ago and asked it to do a painting, a watercolor painting. And he showed us the result, and it was amazing. And he said, at that point, I realized my days of an artist are over. And my point is, no, not necessarily, because I see art, amazing art of all types, be they pictures, products, statues, being sold for proper amounts of sats to represent the time and effort that went into producing that. We see that at the conference you've just been to in BTC Prague. We'll see it in Lugano. We'll see it all around the world at these conferences. There are artists who can make money now with Bitcoin. So there's new technology that can be scary. AI, I'm now redundant, you're thinking. Not necessarily so. There could be a new product. Maybe you are redundant, but maybe there's a Bitcoin product you could sell. There's some angle. So diving into the community aspect was part of my pitch today, to go and explore, to hook up with Bitcoiners and expand the mind, which actually just happened after the presentation. We had a gentleman from Satlantis approach me, And we're going to his unconference session at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and I'm sure we'll end up working together. So come to conferences and connect with other Bitcoiners, yeah.
It is an incredibly powerful thing when you meet Bitcoiners in real life.
Yeah, it is. I agree.
Yeah. Your son is also a Bitcoiner.
Yes.
How has Bitcoin, I guess, changed your approach to educating your son and helping him get his career started and things like that?
I think it's definitely had an impact. I mean, you've got to be careful as a father not to impose too much, because you get a rebellion against that, don't you? Oh, yeah. And I'm very aware of that. So it was certainly no forcing with the Bitcoin. That was through osmosis. He's the guy who's messaging me, have you seen the price? Or have you seen this? Have you seen this meme? Because we have these incredible memes. And literally, I put the last meme on the presentation at 11:45 last night, which was, of course, about the price.
And
you saw that.
It was a live meme, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Only just been published.
Describe it really quickly.
Oh, it was kind of a play on a usual, where I want to buy Bitcoin. The price lit up in green, 112,000, which it was just the other week. And then the other picture in red, it's 99,000. I'm not touching this, the world's coming to an end. But it's so true, isn't it? Oh, yeah. And we did get a laugh with that meme, but that meme was absolutely live. I saw it at 11:45. By 10:02, it was in the pitch. And there was 2 others, actually, that went in there as well, last-minute adjustments. So the great thing with Bitcoin, it's a lot of fun, a lot of giggles. I find a lot of humour, by the way. I love humour. British comedies, we have a certain thing with humour, and there's a lot of people playing around, making us laugh, and these memes do the job well, I think. Would you agree?
100%. I mean, a picture says 1,000 words, right?
It does, yeah.
And also, they're harder to censor. I don't know. I studied China, and they use memes to communicate dissent there, so very interesting. So if I heard you right in your presentation, the main message that you want to get across to people is that business, individual, ultimately individuals are businesses, because if you're not making money, you're not going to survive. We all need a Bitcoin strategy.
Yeah.
What are some of those different options or different strategies that you see working, and maybe in the future, will things change when Bitcoin is adopted at a higher level?
First off, it starts the conversation. Yeah, you've got to start a conversation about Bitcoin, and we've spoken how Ordermoon is a conduit to making that happen. And it evolves. Strategy is not something you can go, right, I have the right strategy as a restaurant, what should I do? But it changes your thinking. Bitcoin changes you. You can't change Bitcoin. And so I'll use that generalism for a very specific issue of running a restaurant or a bar. How can it change you? You meet Bitcoiners. So the people, the community you will meet who come to your venue will influence you. They will show some passion. They will come up with ideas. Maybe you're selling a craft beer and you want to have, I'm just trying to think of something from the top of my head, something like, you also sell sushi. So you want to have Satoshi Sushi Night. I love a bit of alliteration. And they'll go, yeah, that's cool. That will get some Bitcoiners to buy sushi and beer, or you sell a beer and we need to have Freedom Beer, or we need to have Satoshi beer or something like that. So there's idea, so it changes, the strategy will be evolving based on passionate Bitcoiners that will come to and talk to you. It will be the skin in the game that changes you. Yeah, the number go up technology we talk about, and we sometimes want to diminish, but this is a marketing tool. The number go up, and you start thinking. The algorithm that you use will subtly change. We did talk about the echo chamber, but it's not all bad, is it? And the conviction level does increase with the knowledge, and the knowledge comes from that algorithm that picks up. You've started to watch a Michael Saylor video or a particular podcast or one of your videos, yeah, from your channel, Kyle.
Or one of your podcasts, yeah.
Or one of our podcasts, dare I say, Ordermoon podcast. It's in English. So the thing is it's evolving the strategy. If there's anyone who has a bigger company, they really need to think about it, maybe connect with, it is a personal thing, what the right strategy might be, and ideas will be fluid, like we've just spoken about. We pick up things from human interaction. And I did stress this human interaction, I think, in the talk this morning, to go to the meetups and to go to the conferences, and you'll get ideas. All of a sudden, they'll come to you in the morning after one conversation. One word can trigger it for you. So on a restaurant, it's exactly the same. Your restaurant owner will come to the meetup, like we had in Plovdiv, as a merchant, and that will trigger new ideas to interact with other Bitcoiners, maybe new collaborations, new products, a new website. And we've seen that happen here in Bulgaria, people feeling motivated to do new things because they've met other people, yeah.
How's the strategy changed?
How has our strategy changed with regards to Bitcoin from the early days? The early days, we went to various people and said, you should accept Bitcoin. And we would give them Bitcoin, even, to say, look at this, isn't it incredible? And there's one owner, I must tell you this little anecdote. There's one owner of a small chain of wonderful restaurants in Sofia. I gave him, I think it was the equivalent of €7 in 2015. Whilst, of course, he's lost the private keys, he remembers that very, very well. He knows that's worth €1,800 now, or whatever it's worth in today's terms. All his restaurants now accept Bitcoin. He had to listen to me saying, back in those days, I'm going, this is the next big thing. It's going to take time. But he remembers the conversation. We remember exactly where we had it, in his restaurant at the time. So I think this is very important, these stories of what happens. But going back to the strategy, we were unsuccessful. We abandoned the strategy then, yeah. We were too early. And I saw on Twitter, as it was called in those days, that other people had tried the obvious thing. Let's get more people into it. Let's get more merchants. And pretty much all of us failed. And I put it down to we were just too early. It had to evolve. And then fees increased, online fees increased. It became more cumbersome. And yeah, and so really, once we got to the beginning of last year, 2024, we felt we could have a strategy. We were keen to be back in there, but the time wasn't right for us until 2024 to do that. And, you know, as we say, a week is a long time in Bitcoin and 18 months is quite a long time in Bitcoin. So, as I mentioned, we've got some exciting plans to build more and more on Bitcoin and make Bitcoin even more at the heart of what we do, not just financially, but in everything that we do, yeah.
What does the Ordermoon team look like, and what's the dynamic there? What are the roles and responsibilities?
Well, they're pretty fluid. Nasco is an amazing mathematician, so he is the technical guy and understands the technology. Whilst as a kid, I played with my Commodore 64 and a tape drive, Sinclair ZX. You remember those toys if you're 60. And you have no idea. 64K stands for 64K, not megabytes or gigabytes, just to let you know. So I did have a slight understanding of the 0 and 1s and the language called basic programming. So I guess I had a slight technical bent. I was the one my father would ask to figure out how to use the car audio system. Yeah. But yeah, Nasco's supremely good mathematician and technician. So the diamond, and also very good with people as well, very patient. I could say very calm, yeah. Patience is required when dealing with the restaurant sector. Anyone who's dealing with the restaurant sector who's listening to this will understand. Very wild characters in the restaurant sector, often come from different areas. Yes, you've got some people who've been in the hospitality sector, they've worked their way up. But here in Bulgaria, we have quite a large number who've been doing other things, maybe property development or something like that, and they fancy being a restaurant owner. So there can be different characters and different levels on the learning process. But we've got to the stage where NASCO always deals with the technical guys. I do not get involved trying to tell them what to do or anything like that. I get involved on the UX and the UI side. And obviously being English, I have certain aesthetic and a certain thing with the words trying to work, okay? And we both, obviously in my background, here more recently on Bansko blog when I came to Bulgaria was of course to do the content, and NASCO's picked that up brilliantly as well. So we're really a complementary team, but most importantly we have had the journey pretty much together on the Bitcoin side, and I think that makes a huge difference. I think NASCO particularly got that lift up to the level when he went to Arnhem on Adopting Bitcoin conference, a small little conference. Arnhem was the first place in Europe, or one of the first places in Europe, to build up a bit of a circular economy. And I think a few missing bits in his mind were filled there. And I think that was terrific. That happened at the beginning of last year. And I think that was a big motivation for us to all agree now is the time to push and roll out Bitcoin as part of our business.
Why is now the time?
Why is now the time? The technology, for sure. Look, we saw today when we paid for our coffee at Black Honey, just down the Piran Street here, the payment's instant. And it's getting better all the time. There's, you know, we're now virtually at the point where we can tap our phone and pay with Bitcoin. You know, this technology is just about here. It's about to come mainstream, or a Bolt card. You know, it's the same, virtually the same, and will be the same, and will be better than the fiat technology. And I think this is terribly important. And I think we'll abstract away some of the words and some of the slightly clunky things we have at the moment. But by gosh, it's come a long way. And I'm super impressed with the wallets that are coming out now, beautifully designed, very simple, very quick, you know, that do everything that we need. So yeah, I think now is the time for businesses. And if you haven't been awake, and I think this is the message I have, and I did talk about it a little bit, because someone asked the question at the end, isn't this being co-opted by the corporates, BlackRock and so forth? And whilst we might say they're pushing up the price, maybe for the small guy, for me it was always inevitable. It had to be that way. It has to be for everyone. And you've got to remember that the coins, so many of these coins are in individual hands, and there did need to be a distribution for this to go right up the chain so that different generations have the coin. They get involved in politics, of course, and that's helped in America particularly to move the agenda, to free Ross, which was an important part, I believe. So yeah, I think that would be my answer to that one.
If you were going to give a piece of advice to someone who wants to build on Bitcoin, what would you tell them?
Well, obviously, first, get off zero. The 0 to 1 argument remains true. Make action, do something now. And the tools are there now to build on Bitcoin. You see, look, okay, let's talk numbers. And I did this a bit in the presentation. I do like numbers when it comes to Bitcoin.
Numbers don't lie.
Look, you've got an asset that historically, I don't know about the future, but historically has had an unbelievable compound annual growth rate, CAGR, over 10 years, 83%. But let's half that to 40% and knock 10% off because we're just being super, super conservative. Is it not a good idea to build on an asset that grows at 30%? And I compared it with property, didn't I? And I said, you're very happy with your clever property investments. And they may have been very clever in the day when you were doing very clever refinancing deals and stuff like that, but it's become increasingly hard. And then on a small basis, you have you're a landlord dealing with tenants whose boiler's broken, who's broken something, can't get in, leaves the place a trash, grows illegal drugs in it, all sorts, you name it, it happens with rental property. Build on Bitcoin, where at least the base asset is growing for you, and then your return will be more than 30%. So think about that deeply, rather than always thinking you need to see that cash in the bank as a euro, dollar, yen, etc. Yeah.
It is a big shift to denominating in Bitcoin. Last question. We're making a film called Build on Bitcoin. What would you personally hope that the outcome be for this film, and what you hope people to take away from it?
Wow, that's a good question. Thanks for that, Kyle, because when you're watching this video and you've witnessed Kyle go deeply, very closely to many people, and I've only known you personally for 3 hours, maybe 4.
Well, we met last year in Bulgaria.
Oh, we did,
Yeah,
yes, we did, of course, at the
I was
conference.
like, how is this English guy living in Bulgaria? What's going on? Or British guy, excuse me.
It's okay, English is good. I've forgotten the question, but yeah, what my message would be after watching this video is, yes, take action. Think about the points that we've discussed. Think about getting off zero. Have a strategy for Bitcoin. Think about what an advantage it is to be amongst the first to do things, not when everyone else has done it. How many times have you seen in history where the early movers have the advantage? Look after yourself and your family and make that first move. And don't always read the media and do what you're told. Because they will not be talking about the stuff that we're talking about on your Building on Bitcoin documentary here in Bulgaria. So yeah, good luck with your video. It's been an absolute pleasure. I can't wait to see the final result, by the way. And my final question to you, what do you think of Bansko? Because this is your first visit to Bansko.
I've been here a few hours. I'm blown away. We're in a magical place right now with the beautiful mountains behind us. It feels like home for me because the grass is the same, the trees look the same, the people are awesome, and yeah, I'm very grateful to be here.
Great to chat to you, and I'm delighted you've enjoyed Bansko and the trip so far. Thank you,
Thank you
Carl.
so much, Lance.